So we are ready to start What's at the Core of Your Wound. Welcome, everybody. I'm Marguerite Rigoglioso.
Hi, everyone, and welcome. I'm Jenny Karns, the creator of Remembering Our Magic and the author of the forthcoming book, Alchemy and the Ache, Transforming Life's Most Painful Stories into Great Personal Power. And my guest today and cohort is Dr. Marguerite Rigoglioso. Marguerite is the founding director of Seven Sisters Mystery School and a scholar practitioner of the ancient Mediterranean mystery tradition. She is an author, university faculty member, spiritual teacher, channeler, and clairvoyant guide. She mentors women and men to help them cultivate their spiritual knowledge and bring their sacred calling to fruition. As some of you know, many of you know, Marguerite has a new webinar that begins live this Wednesday, October 9th at 10 a.m. Pacific called Transform Your Hell, using the descent of Inanna and the Gospel of Mary Magdalene to navigate life and death. Today, Marguerite is with us to give us a sneak peek at some of the themes she will look at in this webinar. I hope you'll stay with us to the end of the telecast because she has a special discount offer for you at the end of the call. So welcome, Marguerite.
Thank you, Jenny. Thanks so much for being with me today.
Oh, it's such an honor. I'm thrilled to do this. So you are a fine scholar who knows her stuff when it comes to Inanna and Mary Magdalene, but you're also a spiritual practitioner. So can you give us some context about how you get your information beyond the academic so that we can get a sense of where you're coming from?
Yeah. So what I'm going to be sharing today is primarily from that arena, and that is I do a lot of work in meditation. In deep meditations, I've learned a practice of meditating that allows me to clear the auric field, and it's a meditation that's anywhere between 40 minutes and an hour long. Clear the auric field and then allow me to open my upper chakras of reception so that I can connect finally at long last over these last 3 years with higher guidance. And that has been, a tremendous thing that I've done through my work with the Foundation for Spiritual Development in San Rafael. But any good psychic school should be able to help you to open up those doors of perception. I've also been doing trance journey work, entering into non-ordinary states of consciousness through various means for, really 14 years now. And on a fairly regular basis, and there are many methods that people can use for entering into altered states of consciousness. So I also just pay attention to my intuitions. I pay attention to synchronicities and the little signs that happen along the way, along the day, animal visitations and things like that. So this is sort of the field from which I receive my information and then share it with others.
Beautiful. I love that. And I so appreciate how you do that. And walking alongside you and seeing how you work is just it's so powerful and wonderful. So I'm excited to hear more.
Thank you.
So I love this story. Will you tell us about what your higher guidance has told you about when troubles began on planet Earth and how that led to personal suffering?
Yeah. I mean, these are things where, like I'm just a girl from the Bronx, okay? when I have started to go into some of these altered state journeys and then working in the meditational realm, I get this information that all I can say is it kind of feels biblical. It feels like these are the stories that you read about in the great religions, and you just try to make sense of them as a regular human being. But one of the things that's come to me through my guidance is that the earth plane was actually meant to be a realm of Eden. It was meant to be like a golden age place, meaning one of the places in the universe where growing can happen through joy. And because it's one of these oases around the universe that gets sought after by certain energies that are not as in a high vibration, and they try to suck off of it because there's a feeding chain on the subtle realms of reality as there is on the animal kingdom plane. They like to search these things out and get a hold of them, and then they start poking holes in the grid work of the planet. And once they start getting holes in, then they can insert thought forms and different directives that start leading people astray and down a path that begins suffering. And one of the main first things that they start doing is getting people to start killing the life on the planet. So killing the animals and killing the plants and the trees and disturbing the natural environment without asking permission and so forth. And this creates holes, because when you start decimating animals and the nature life, it creates holes from what is that energy that feeds us, and it gets like Swiss cheese. So the grid starts going down around the planet, and particularly over urban areas, which is why you have acute levels of suffering over urban areas. There's not enough nature and wildlife to provide the energetic comfort that people could get. And so we keep going downward and downward and downward into these spirals, and then it becomes generational, because we pass on the lack and the deficit and the pain from one to another. And what I'm shown is that one of the major things, and this is not to make women take on one more thing to have them blame themselves, but one of the major transmission places is through the umbilical cord. And so a mother really needs to understand that when she is pregnant, she needs to be in sacred space as much as possible, and she needs to really be doing her work to calm herself, have higher vibrational thoughts, and so forth as much as possible. And that's a long time, 9 months, because you will transmit to the baby not only the physical types of things, but the energetic and the emotional positives or negatives that are going on for you. So that I've seen numbers of clients where they have issues in their third chakra, in their umbilicus area where they were connected to their mother, because they were taking on like their mother's depression, all the negative thought forms and the worries that the mother had and blah, blah, blah. And now they they got this in their system, so that now they have to kind of do this work to dismantle this and to release this energetic that comes through to them and get fed through a new type of umbilical cord, which we can talk about later. So what I'm shown is that the young, so what we have is people who are not fully filled anymore, raising and bringing to birth other children and then trying to raise them. And so we don't have the proper inner supports, and we don't have the proper outer supports, which I can talk about the outer supports later when we talk about social structure. But so what I'm shown is that the young human being needs a tremendous amount of psychic energy to grow strongly and confidently. This is not just food. This is like emotional mana. It is energy, and the child is hungry. If you think it needs a lot of milk, you should see what it needs on the astral plane, And it literally does take a village to provide this. A real adequate flow of energetic nurture to the baby human. So not even a solid couple can generate enough of this primal mana for their children. And so, it just really, so then we also have we have the distractions of parents that are fragmented, and our attention is going in a million directions, so that even what energy we had cannot always be going to the child, And so you have the phenomenon of energetically malnourished children and adults coming through. So what this leaves us with is something akin to a vision I once saw in a shamanic journey. And it was a vision of the id. You know how Freud came up with the ego, the super ego, and the id. The id was sort of the primordial place underneath. This vision of the id was that due to this energetic undernourishment, for many people, the id remains arrested and undeveloped, like a baby bird that's fallen from its nest and has such a weak head, weak neck, it can't even hold up its head. And its mouth remains a gaping cavern, which is craving to be filled. So I, along with many others, have been walking around like this, and I can talk to you about some of my personal stuff with this journey as well. So the id, or this part, this malnourished energetic part of you, will grasp the energy from anywhere, in any way, to sustain itself. And we all know instinctively how to cord and contract with others to get the energy that we never adequately received in our early years. And so without knowing it, we operate on the subtle plane, frequently grasping at and demanding the energy of others. So this is just one way of starting to look at it that fills in some of the psychology that we've learned along the years from the field of psychology. This is what I call shamanic psychology. It's looking at the energetics of what happens. And I'll just pause there.
So, but how can we deal with the energy deficit more constructively? Like, what kind of tools do you have now to offer? And what can people do personally so that they can get the energy we need without grasping at the energy of others?
Right.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to mention is that, and this happened to me recently, because I was dealing with my own wound. My own core wound has gotten activated through a series of events that have recently occurred to me. So while I was in the midst of dealing with this core wound, which has all to do with my mother's death when I was 10 years old, right? Talk about being too early. I was walking on this path I've walked for the past 3 years, my morning walk. And all of a sudden I see this nanny with this little child, this little boy. He's not even 2, I find out. He is extremely upset and crying and screaming for his mother. And I thought, I was starting to get really upset just witnessing this. I was like, this is all I need. Right now, do I really need to be seeing a kid who, I'm good enough? And they were basically saying to me, yeah, take a look, sister, because that's what we're showing you. Look at the technology of it. Look at the mechanism. Look at what's happening with this child. He is getting traumatized right now. He's having a wound because probably there's not enough to go around as it is for this child. Now he has a nanny that's been hired to take him off, and the mother is probably doing the best she can to scramble in this world. Okay, that's why these structures are miles high that we're involved in. And I just saw how deeply he was being traumatized. And I thought, wow, this is real, and where does that go in the energy body, and how long does it stay, and So, okay, so what to do? First of all, also, these wounds that happen, and this was brought to me recently because I just did some study with a beautiful teacher named Amareya Dreamseed. I worked with him personally, and he did an initiation into the void this past weekend in San Rafael, California.
Wow, cool.
What I realized in this work is that whatever we're going through in this lifetime, whatever our core wound, it always comes back to the feeling of being separated, the feeling of being separated from the divine, usually. And that takes us back to the primal wound. The primal wound of existence having the experience of being separated from itself and the divine. And there's a whole Gnostic story of Sophia descending into matter. She's the cosmic womb. She wants to experience going into matter, and so she descends so far that she even forgets who she was. She has the experience that all of us having, which is to forget who we actually are. And it's one thing to say it and go, yeah, I know I'm part of the divine. Then it's one thing to actually have some kind of experience that ignites your fifth dimensional consciousness and you know it. You actually have that feeling of oneness. And once you grasp and taste that, you can start cultivating higher mind more and more and feeling and realizing, wow, this is, in a sense, part of the reality of being in three-dimensional worlds, this feeling of separation. Okay, so what can I do? Being in three-dimensional world. Okay, so a lot of people are doing their therapy work, which is great, talking about, what the issues are, identifying what the wound was, that type of stuff. But there's also other techniques. And so some of them have to do with connecting back with nature. So here's one that was given me this past weekend because I was just teaching a group, my Gaia Grid Activation group, and I was doing a drumming trance with them. And what happened, and one of the women had started talking to us about one indigenous practice where people lie with their bellies on the ground. And so I started working with that, and the guides were showing me to have the women, and there was a man, to go with their bellies on the ground. And here's what you do. You connect your belly, your umbilical, where your umbilical was severed, you connect with Mother Earth. And you see that umbilical cord going into the earth. You reestablish that connection, because this planet that we're on is not dumb matter. It is a consciousness. Some know it as Gaia, some know it as Mother Earth, so forth. It is a mother. We are emanations of her. So she is first and foremost our primary mother here, beyond just our birth mothers. You can always go back to her by reattaching the umbilical cord to her. You lie down, and if you can't do it directly on the ground, you can do it on a big boulder, or you can do it on a tree. You connect your belly to the surface, and you start sending the umbilical cord down. Then you allow the energy to come up from Gaia into your umbilical cord, clearing out any of the stuff that might have been stuck there from your own gestation, and really filling your body. You can do this in a crisis, and you can also do it on a daily or weekly basis to begin to recultivate this connection with Mother Earth. So this is a non-conventional but very effective means of getting that thing filled, because what's happening is a lot of us have the disconnect in the solar plexus, in the third chakra, around the umbilical. Okay, so this is one way to start healing it. Just simply, even if you don't put your umbilical on the ground or a tree or a rock, just simply being out in nature, I mean wild nature, not even a domesticated park, but going out to some kind of the closest wilderness area that you can to your local dwelling place, and allowing yourself, at least a good half hour to an hour there, because the energy particles will start filling you up as well. You'll feel your energy shift, and you'll start feeling filled. What we want is to feel filled, because it is the gap, the hole, this illusion of the hole that is at the core of our wound. Okay? There's another exercise called the Dantian. This was given by a shaman, a beautiful teacher, monk, Buddhist monk, named Master Lim. And he's been at the Shamanism Conference in San Rafael, California for quite a number of years. He's a very, very powerful healer. It is the simplest thing. You put your hand on your belly, right above your navel, and you just begin to rub it in a circle, in a clockwise circle, down to the left and up to the right, all around your belly. You rub it, rub it, rub it, rub it. And this will also help you relax that place that feels severed and begin to start filling it up. All right, so that's a really strong, that's a really strong way. Another is creating an umbilical cord of gold to the cosmos. So this, you're lying down on your back, and you are seeing your belly filled with gold, and you're seeing the cosmos as a great womb, a great uterus of gold, and you're seeing the umbilical cord between her and you allow this stream of golden light to come into your own umbilical cord and filling up your body with light. So this is a very high-level technology, because the visualization of golden light is profound. And once you really get the hang of it, you can genuinely start feeling your body and your personal space getting energized with this. It's an energy. It's a consciousness that has codes in it and information, and it's a comfort. So these are just, there's more, but these are just 3 of the ways that we can begin to heal this core wound, this core feeling of separation, which keeps having ramifications in our personal life and past lives for those who understand about past lives.
Right. Yeah, and that carries over into now.
Yep.
Yes.
It absolutely does.
Yeah. Well, I have a bunch more questions for you. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about the webinar, or should I continue with some questions?
Yeah, let me speak a little bit about the webinar, because it is really it is really related to everything we're talking about, but there are other dimensions that are going to be offered in the webinar, because so the webinar, which begins on Wednesday, live call. You don't have to be there for the live calls, but if you want to be on the Q&A, you can. And there's going to be 5 calls Wednesdays, 10 to 11:30 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. UK, from October 9th through the 6th. And it's called, as you said, Transform Your Hell, Using the Descent of Inanna and Gospel of Mary Magdalene to Navigate Life and Death. And this is for everyone, because we've all been to hell, or we're headed there through a life shock, a life shock, an illness, a depression, a difficult shamanic trip, travails of any kind with ourselves, our loved ones, our children, and so forth. And we need to find a way to manage and get meaning from these experiences. They are not just meant to screw us up. These are learning times, severe learning times. And if you can learn the technologies about what to do, it can make it a lot better. Then you can ride the waves of what's going on, ride the emotions, but not feel completely lost. Also, we're going to be looking at the journey after death, because we're told, if anything, simple, like you go to heaven or hell, or who the heck knows where you go. And that's what I call under preparation. Okay?
Yeah, for sure.
Now, most of the ancient traditions know that we've got to spend a little time at least while we're here preparing for this thing on the other side, because there's going to be a lot going on over there, and there's a good likelihood that we're going to come back into the earth plane through another umbilicus. You want to do that in the highest way possible. You want to minimize your suffering, really. So we need good instructions to guide us through the road beyond. And so these 2 stories, the ancient descent of Inanna, which talks about the Sumerian goddess's descent from the heavens into hell to meet herself, basically, her twin, in a sense, sister, and the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, which talks about special teachings that she got on what happens to the soul after death and how you have to navigate those voices. So these 2 things are companion pieces for us dealing with the descent in life and the ascent after life.
Awesome.
We are going to be looking at, in the 5 calls, things like what's the difference between the self that we like the best and our underworld self, because this is what always gets kicked up when we start going into these descents. We start seeing all of the material that is the mirror to who we are in this life. I mean, nasty stuff. This is the stuff that creates wars, that creates murder, that creates violence, that creates abuse. It's all within us, too. And until we start seeing the garden for what it is, we're not going to really help ourselves, and we're certainly not going to have world peace. Right. So these are deep, deep journeys of descent that we need to go through. We need to look at the shadow. That's what it is, to go down to it, to go down into a descent like this and meeting this inner queen or king, this Erish Kegel who's down there. And then what do you do down there? How do you handle it? How do you get on the way back up? We talk about what this text, the Descent of Inanna, shows us. We really look at it from a human psychological perspective and a practical perspective. And then moving into the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, what were some of these secret teachings that Mary Magdalene learned according to this gospel that weren't available to the other apostles, about what's guarding the Bardo realm, the doors, how to work with the ego after death and navigate the voices, set boundaries, and ascend. So this is going to be a very profound look, and what I want to just tell everybody is that right after this call, everybody who has registered is going to be receiving the email with the link for the webinar. And for those who are on this call, there's an exclusive discount of $30 off of that webinar because there are a couple of different pay options. You can do monthlies with mentoring. It's $97 a month for 4 months, or you can pay up front for $377. That saves you some money. And then if you just want the webinar alone without the mentoring, it's $87 a month for 4 months. Or if you pay up front, you save by paying $318. You can have a $30 discount on whatever your payment option is if you just go to the shopping cart and in the coupon code area, you just type in the words transform and then the number 30. It's all strung together. Transform is all in caps, like as in transform your hell. Transform 30, the $30 discount. And again, that information will be in the email that everybody's going to get right after this call with the link. And if worse comes to worse, you can go to sevensistersmysteryschool.com, enter the site, and go under webinars, and you'll see Transform Your Hell in the drop-down menu, and you can register there. So, I'm really hoping that people will consider. We already have quite a number of people signed up for that. There will be time, hopefully, at the end of the calls for Q&A, as we will do today. So I'd like some people are already writing into the Q&A screen on the website with some of the questions, which you and I will address, and then I might open some of the lines today. And it'll be the same format for the Transform Your Hell webinar, which starts on Wednesday, October 9th.
Very cool. And I love that you have this option that we can get mentoring with you as well as the webinar. And I highly recommend that. And you made that so crazy affordable because working with you is revolutionary and life-changing. I can totally attest to it. So I just want to say, check out the mentoring.
I'm giving a 45-minute call with that, which is really good. I mean, because I take some time to get to know you, and then I do clairvoyant guidance or practical guidance, depending on what it is that you're needing. Some people use the mentoring to help them with their spiritual path. Some people use it to help them get a jump start on their sacred career, or a little bit of both. And it really is profound work together. So it's a lovely, lovely benefit. And you can also, a lot of stuff gets stimulated from the webinar, and you can bring that into the mentoring session as well. And that gets scheduled sometime during the course of the webinar. We will contact you and give you some options for scheduling that appointment with me.
Very cool. Yeah, beautiful. This is a great opportunity to get to work with you deeper. So, can I ask you some more questions, or do you want to take them off of the line? Okay, great. So what can people do collectively and socially so that we can restore some of the ancient way of living where people had their needs met better? And I know you're a scholar of the matriarchy studies, so we want to know what's going on in that arena that might help as well.
There's personal work and there's collective work. And so the collective work is that if it takes a village to raise a child adequately, physically and energetically, to have that child be filled because the child needs so much food, so much energetic food, then you have to provide the village. And in the ancient days, and some cultures still today do have this, we had the village, we had communal living. We had a matriarchal social structure where women were at the center. They were the nurturers. They were protected around the circle by the men. And the primary male caretaker was actually the woman's brother. So it wasn't really the children's biological father. it was their uncle that was their primary caretaker. And their biological fathers were busy in their own mother's lodges taking care, and it was absolutely fine. There was no loss around that. The great thing about it is if the love relationship dissolved for whatever reason, it didn't create emotional, economic, or logistical trauma for anyone. Everything was still intact. The child had all its needs, and the child had its aunties, its uncles, its grandmothers, its grandfathers, its cousins, its sisters, its brothers, all around to help with that communal raising and rearing. So, yeah, there is a lot going on right now in the matriarchal studies community, which has been spearheaded by a woman named Heide Gutner-Abendroth, who incidentally is in the United States touring right now, and she will be in the California area very soon, this month, I believe, talking about all of her research about what constitutes a matriarchal society and how we might start reconstituting them again. You know, how can we create our own versions of matriarchy? Well, one thing is that a lot of women are finding themselves ending up single mothers anyway, the way things are going. And so some women are looking to join homesteads. And some people have not lost their intergenerational living. I know that, you know, my immigrant Italian grandparents and great-grandparents, communal living was a way of life, and it was also a necessity. And there was just family around all the time. There was always someone to go to. There was always someone to talk to. There was always someone to offer you that nurturing. So how can we start creating these structures again? And there's a lot of co-housing options that are going on and so forth. Because, see, the nuclear family is one of the nuclear family is like the nuclear bomb. That's how I look at it. Okay?
Yeah. Okay.
It's a problem.
Yeah.
It is a problem, period. Because it's not a tenable social structure for anyone. And this is what we've, by and large, gotten stuck with. So it's kind of up to like the younger people who are coming up through the ranks, who are more thinking about things like Occupy and fairness and communal living, and how might we really do this in a responsible way that's going to work. What are the kinds of social structures and living structures, housing arrangements that we might do? These are all the kinds of things we need to start thinking about. And then just having an emotional matriarchy of just allowing more access by relatives and so forth. And of course, granted, everyone's walking around wounded. We're all the walking wounded, right? So it's like, I don't want to have my mother come anywhere near my child, or, you know, whoever, right? So we're just going to have to do the best we can with what we've got, and know that what we're seeding and doing here is going to benefit in an exponential way the next and next and next and next generations. Because we have to really be thinking 7 generations out. How is it going to be looking in 7 generations? So that's one, you know, thing that we can be thinking about collectively.
Right, and if the kids aren't getting the emotional food that they need now, how can they be creating what they need in the future?
Yeah, I think it starts with a little bit of consciousness, and once you start getting a toehold, you know, of how each of us can fill ourselves and then come to our collective and child-rearing responsibilities a bit more filled, then that will just create a virtual spiral.
Yep, absolutely. Well, I know you have some unique perspectives on the causes of sexual abuse. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, and this is a really difficult one, and I know this could potentially be triggering for listeners, because I'm coming to the conclusion that, you know, in a way, a majority of people have been sexually abused.
Yeah.
Now, here's what the guides tell me about this, and you can take it or leave it. What they say is that this is not a human phenomenon. This is a plague that has been caused by energies coming from the outside. Now, anybody who's been studying anything about the energetics the energetic history of human Earth and all the beings that surround this plane and so forth will understand this. For some, it'll be quite a new concept. That said, I find it relieving because it makes more sense to me. They've shown me that this is a plague that is going on exponentially. Certain entities get food from situations like suffering, trauma, blood, and especially if sexual energy gets mixed into it. Potent food for some energies, so they like to see that it happens quite a bit.
Yuck.
And so if you look at the spooky nature of what's going on sexually, first of all, a lot of times you don't have your full memories as to what the heck's going on. That's a clue right there, number one. Number two, why are the perpetrators in such denial? Like, they don't even know what's going on. Because a lot of times they don't. They're getting used. And it is not clear on what plane the information and the control is actually happening, or that this experience is actually happening. So number one, these energies get into the weak points of people. If people are vulnerable, whatever is going on for them, and then suddenly our parental figures are acting out sexually on us or other children. That is not the way that is not a human phenomenon. And it is not really the fault of humans, okay? It's a plague, it's a disease, it's an infestation. So also the other piece that comes with this is that this is what the guides have told me. Again, take it or leave it, but it's interesting. One of the reasons why people have trouble remembering whether sex abuse happened or they think they have a little piece of it here or there is because the memory of the sexual abuse is an insertion into your timeline. Now that will really blow people's minds, but this has to do with the nature of the time-space reality. And that's another thing that we're not hip to for the most part. The time is malleable and it doesn't have to be linear. So you can have an entity that can inject back into your timeline an experience of sexual abuse. And what they do is they'll show you a little thread of it. Yeah, they show you a thread of sex abuse. A little tiny memory that you think you might be having. And that what they want you to do is they want you to pull that out. They want you to pull that out because then what you're going to do is you're going to relive the whole timeline and basically you're going to set down the timeline. And they don't care whether it actually happened in your real life or whether it's an injected timeline. You still go through the same feelings, you still go through the same horror, and they get their food. Right. So this is a really super esoteric way of looking at this that is going to be really hard for a lot of people to look at. But for those people who are interested in looking at things from fifth-dimensional consciousness, that could be useful because it suggests that therapeutically the answer to treating sex abuse may not necessarily be going and reliving the memories, which is what will tend to happen in therapy situations. It might be working with some kind of high-level shamanic practitioner to take out the timeline. Okay? That's a technology for the next frontier. I don't even fully know how to do it. I was just shown that this is what it is. So yeah, you will. I think that we will be shown it. Okay? Yeah. But it is a way out there idea that tampers with our very notions of reality. But in a sense, makes sense when we think of the whole bizarre operation of this phenomenon on the planet. Okay? So what I'm seeing out there is new therapeutic modes to think about dealing with this, A, as a possible possibly involving timeline injection. And the timeline thing doesn't mean that it didn't happen. It just means that it got retroactively put back into your life. Okay?
Right.
Even if you don't contend on that level, at the very least, understanding that there are energies who benefit from this kind of suffering allows us to start to have a different approach to this problem. So again, this is a really way out there way of looking at this, but as more and more people are opening to the multiple dimensions of things and what's going on, this is an important one.
Yeah, absolutely. And whether real or inserted or what the experience, it feels like it, and if you keep reliving it, it feels real. And
yeah,
so
it is real.
Yeah,
it's not. You're not making it up.
Yeah,
you're not making it up.
Yeah, absolutely. But is there a different way to deal with that energetic personally, like for the individual, to work with any sexual abuse trauma? Is there a different way for us to deal with it?
Well, I would seek practitioners who understand about removing entities. And people who understand about timeline, you know, your own personal timelines, how to dissolve timelines, because there are techniques for dissolving past life trauma. And it has to do with, running a golden light or a different colored light over your timeline in that past life. So why not do it over this line? And there are people in psychic schools who do understand that type of technology, and I think that this is the next frontier for helping people to use light to soothe out this kind of situation rather than to be in the acute emotion of it, to decharge it. And that's different from denial. Right. Decharging an acute experience is different. Okay?
Yeah.
So did you have further questions?
Well, I actually shared about on the Remembering Our Magic Telesummit, and I've talked about this openly, about experiencing sexual abuse as a child. But then it was so interesting because years later, I worked with this for so many years, like healing around that. And years later that I started a healing practice, and I realized that I had spent so many years like working on this nugget of inappropriate touch that now I was doing healing touch, like that the healer had emerged out of it that wouldn't have come had it not happened. So I would love to hear what you have to say, or if you agree that often our core wound can lead us to offering our greatest gifts in the world as well.
Yeah, it does. Absolutely. The core wound is your greatest nightmare and your greatest gift. And that core wound of separation comes in any different form. It can be the form of violation, it can be the form of abandonment, it can be the form of abuse, what have you. Yes. See, this is the paradoxical thing about it, and this is why looking and experiencing the descent of Inanna and really mining that on all of its levels is so important, because that core wound can be turned into your medicine, just as you have found, Jenny.
Yeah.
It is the thing around which you bring the wisdom and the healing to other people who might have gone through, that precise thing. And this is the archetype of the wounded healer, Chiron.
Yeah.
So we're all becoming modern day Chirons in taking our wound and the phantom pain that in some senses never goes away, but you can manage it, and you can have joy, and you can put that into helping the next generation, giving them a leg up so that we can start this virtual spiral. So yes, very much so. And that's one thing you can have to hang on to when you're in the depths of your own hell and descent.
Yep.
Is just to have that little voice say, this is going to be medicine for someone.
Yep. Absolutely.
Okay.
Great.
Did we want to look at some of the questions that are coming in?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
I know you have them in front of you, so what do you see?
Yeah, so also I just want to say that I invite anybody who's on the phone line who wants to give a comment. I can press *2 on your line and I'll unmute your line. And then I'm going to look at some of the questions that are coming in on the interface. If you are on the website, the page, there's a little interface for questions there. And so somebody's asking, will you be able to access this call at a later time? Yes, you can. Anybody who registers now, who already has, or in the future, will be able to listen to it. Those of you who have can come back to it at any time. Another person is saying that for many years she didn't cry. She got angry instead. I think she read and listened to are saying that we should allow ourselves to feel the pain of our wounds. She's been doing that, and she's been crying and grieving nearly every day now for 2 years. Is there a point where living in this pain is counterproductive to our healing? That's somebody from Australia, by the way, who's writing in. I would say that yeah, there is a point at which you want to be working with your healers to look to see what's going on to allow for a prolonged grieving. Sometimes a prolonged grieving is needed. And we know grief, it's some days you're grieving, some days you're fine, some days you're mad, some days, right? It's cyclical a little bit, or spiky, up and down. But I would say that if you've been in a grieving period for nearly 2 years, you will want to start working with some healers, and not just therapists, but psychic healers, to look at what might be going on or stuck on other levels that have to do with the past lives, contracts that you might have, or beliefs that you might be holding on to that are allowing for the suffering to continue beyond its allotted lifespan. So that is a short answer I would get to. We don't want to preempt the grief process, but we also want to look when it's going on, what else might be going on there. That could be a clue to some further healing and releasing that could be happening. We also have somebody from Buffalo asking, if my relationship was volatile and abusive, if I was anxious almost all the time and trying to leave for many months, why am I still so devastated after he broke up with me 1 year and 7 months later? Why do I constantly think about him, even though he was cruel and unkind? So this has to do with, again, getting yourself filled with energy that's appropriate. We all, in these relationship situations, we get into the fill me dynamic. And we sometimes stay around with abuse because at least it's some kind of filling. And then when the person goes, we really feel the gap in the void, and it's horrifying. Because it's the gap in the void that's what we're most wounded by, terrified of. So I would say that it's because of that gap that's there inside you, and you really want to start looking at ways, some of the ones that I suggested, for how to fill in that energy so that you're not still needing it from this other person, filling it in yourself. As you do that, you'll be able to let go and let go and let go of this abusive energy stream that is still, though you're giving or getting energy from it somehow, right? But you want to replace that with a healthy. So again, starting these techniques and starting working with healers, people who can really help you deal with this on the energetic level, people who have fifth dimensional consciousness to allow you to be able to see it. Let's see if we have other, okay. Okay, so nobody on the phone lines has pressed *2 to indicate. I still have some things coming in here. Okay, so somebody from San Francisco is asking, can you please explain a little bit more about the timeline and why we do not remember it or remember it unclearly? There's a lot that can, so with an inserted timeline, I think there are a number of phenomena that go on. One is that in the line of this particular timeline, you actually did experience abuse and you go into a kind of an amnesia around it as a protection. Then there's the phenomenon of, was a timeline inserted back into your life so that you experienced it, but it's a messing up of the time-space continuum. I think those are some of the situations where when we have these vague memories, we can't really remember everything. We're not sure, and so forth. That's a clue. That's a clue that you had an inserted timeline. Okay, so I don't fully understand like what the difference is between either of those, and maybe it's the same thing. I don't have all the technology. I just have what I can offer you as much as I've been given right now. I think that the work for you, the question for you would be to start investigating the nature of time and the nature of memory for yourself, asking your own guides. What is the information that you're going to start receiving? What about if you start looking at the quantum physics level at the nature of time and that you find out that even physicists don't know what the heck it is, and at the smallest intervals it can reverse and, it can be completely manipulated. So that's part of the education that's going on along here. And for some people, the sexual abuse thing will be an opening into exploring the nature of time, which is going to crack open your consciousness further. And so therefore, that's the dark blessing of that type of situation. But these are things that every person is going to have to explore for themselves, because it's all about your consciousness awakening to the deeper and multiple levels of reality. Jenny, did you want to insert anything here, or do you want me to look at another question?
Yeah, look at another question.
Okay. Again, folks can be writing in.
Yeah.
If you know that your life plan has gotten way off track and you're not sure you will ever be able to recover and live your true life, is it worth staying in the present body, or would it make more sense simply to meditate oneself out of the body and then reincarnate into a more meaningful, joyful, productive life? That, my dear, is between you and your guides. No one can answer or should answer that question for you.
Yeah.
And it's in the answering and the discovery that your meaning and your medicine will come to you. And I wish you many blessings for that. But also know that while you're here on the planet, nothing is irrevocable. Mm-hmm. Things can change in a dime, in a moment, in a miraculous way. And if you put out the call for your healings, for your people, for your guides, for your assists, and let that answer come, you may be surprised. Start watching the signs. Start watching the little things that happen, being alert. Where is the help coming? Was there help that you were ignoring? Is there some little shift you could do to be more open to the help? Like I realized that I was kind of wanting a little bit more social activity in my life. I was feeling a little lonely. And then I realized, and I was like, why is no one calling me? It's like, well, you're putting out the vibe that you don't want them to call you. You're acting all busy. You're acting all busy when they call. You're not showing a proactive interest in them as friends. Yeah. Okay, what part of that equation are you not understanding? You know what I mean? So it's like we do these, and then but it took me a while to like kind of realize that I was participatory, in my own loneliness. And that if one little shift, and I could start getting out of it. So these are the types of things that can help you get on a more joyful road, because ultimately, joy is yours. Okay.
Yeah. And life can change in a second. I love that you hit on that, because it can change totally. And I absolutely believe in experiencing new lifetimes within this lifetime.
Absolutely. And if you think of how many lifetimes you have had, I mean, really, could you even recognize the child that doesn't it seem like 7 million incarnations ago? Okay.
Now, I don't know who I was a year ago.
Right? Even 2 weeks ago, I'm like wondering, am I in the same timeline?
Exactly.
Timeline confusion, right? Okay, here's a really wonderful question from Austin. Can the Pleiadians be of help and service? Also, when we do our own healing, does it heal our ancestors? Yes, excellent questions. Yes, absolutely, the Pleiadians can be of help and service. And let's just talk about the Pleiadians right now, because they are our ancestors, number one. They are our ancestors because they are part of the huge star seed that seeded human consciousness and the physical form. And yes, there are many aspects and facets of the Pleiades that can help. Put out the call and start seeing what happens. And getting aware of who they are. I have a webinar called, what did I call it? Reclaiming Our Starry Origins.
Reclaiming Your Starry Origins.
And I have a whole presentation on the Pleiades that will spark you open about this. And there's a lot of information about them on the web. It's not a New Age thing. It is something real. It's deeply embedded in all of the histories of every people around the world. And they are available. They're guides. Yes, call on them. We can call on them individually. We can call on them collectively. I work with the 7 sisters of the Pleiades. That's a whole other phenomenon. But I've had women embody the Pleiades at rituals, the 7 sisters. We're going to do that again probably in the solstice of the winter and have the women embody the Pleiades and give healings. And yes, when you do your own healing, you heal all the way back your family line. That's why they're all looking at you and counting on you.
Exactly.
Because whatever healing you do goes forward, and it also goes backward. So thank you for that question.
A great one.
Yeah. South Africa says, that's when it becomes divine, when we turn it around to offer it for healing to others. Absolutely. Your suffering becomes divine in that moment. It is a paradoxical thing of terrible beauty. Another woman from Pittsburgh. My dreams have been very vivid of late, and I feel I've been visited by my deceased mother, interacted. Is this real possible, and why now after 18 years? Because you're ready to see her. Yes. Yeah. And I've been told by shamans that when people appear in your dreams who've passed on, it is actually them, and it has taken them a tremendous amount of energy to get back down the levels to go into your dream space. So listen seriously to their messages. Okay? She's just trying to give you a message. Hi, we're on the other side. Just a veil away. And she may be wanting to work with you or do some teachings about the nature of reality or your passing or, the whole bigger picture or some family healing, etc. Yes. Somebody's asking, do you feel some of us have come from the future to repair the future? Yes. Or that we remember Eden pre-intrusion. Yes, we all remember Eden. We all remember the fall. We all remember the trauma. Some of us are traversing timelines, coming in from the future, coming into now. There's at least one spiritual leader I know of who says he's from the future, coming in now. Actually, he died recently, so he left again. But this is the thing about the nature of time, and it has to be, the time jumping has to be used very responsibly because we all screwed up with that. I'm just putting a little warning out there. So, Jenny, we are at our hour here. I just want to remind everybody that you'll be receiving the email about getting the new registration with the discount for the Transform Your Hell webinar using the Descent of Inanna and Gospel of Mary Magdalene to navigate life and death. Watch out for that email. Please sign up. We are warmly welcoming you. And Jenny, were there any parting words you would like to make?
No, I just want to thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and what's been coming through for you and for just being here with us today and holding this beautiful space. And I just want to thank everyone who's been on the call, and whatever is coming up for you, we're just sending you love and light. And please, please, please check in with the webinar. Check in with either of us if you have questions. And
yes, and I see also there are a lot of questions that are still on this thing. If I also offer people free exploration sessions for a half hour, if you think you might want to be working with me on some level. I do a lot of mentoring with people, and so, or we could talk about what's available through Seven Sisters that might help you. So please contact me at Marguerite at sevensistersmysteryschool.com, or to make it simpler, info at sevensistersmysteryschool.com, and we can connect up. Okay, so I'm just delighted that we had so many callers, and that I know we're going to have people listening to this on into the future. And Jenny, thank you so much for hosting.
Thank you so much for sharing, Marguerite. Have a beautiful day, everyone.
Okay, very good. Take care now.
Okay,
bye all.
Thanks. Bye-bye.